Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Grand Cathay in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And they are going to be doing a Cathay in DLC. When exactly it's going to come out, when they're going to announce anything about it, we don't know. They just stated they are going to do probably a single lord or maybe a paid lord like the Monkey King, alongside a free lord like the Fire Dragon. Would make a lot of sense to have Fire Dragon and the Monkey King, given their quote-unquote relationship in the lore, such as it is. Or they could do yin-yin. But regardless of what Creative Assembly decides to do in terms of the character, I think it's important to talk about Cathay itself, and the kind of things that Creative Assembly should hopefully improve for them as a race. Because they could just decide, well, Cathay works well enough as it is. Maybe we shouldn't change it. In reality, Cathay does have some very big issues that they need improvement on. The first big issue, and probably the biggest one from my perspective, has to do with the lack of a casualty replenishment hero. One of the things I actually hope Chazo Change would do is add such a hero, because casualty replenishment matters a great deal in a campaign, especially a longer campaign. Because you end up having battles that you know you'll win easily. You have the army as Cathay because of the high level of armor and leadership on units. But you end up having to fight a lot of battles manually, partly because you have a combination of melee and range units, so melee units will always take more damage. And then because you can't replenish your troops, and that's an annoying factor. Something related to that is actually to do with climate. So Cathay climate suitability in a campaign is pretty poor, and this affects all of them. Yes, Yanbo has jungle, but who has ever wanted to go in Lustria and spend their campaign there? Nothing good has ever come out of Lustria, I would say. You know how Sourfang says that about Silphus and WoW? Yeah, I'm saying that about Lustria. Nothing good has ever come out of Lustria. Now, from my view, there's obviously the clear solution, which is to add a new casualty replenishment hero. Or, what would make a lot more sense, would be to add a new hero that would have increased mobility and instead give casualty replenishment to alchemists. Would fit, wouldn't it? Like alchemists, healing, perfect, logical thing. And maybe, maybe even going further, maybe what Astromancer should have would be that campaign movement range, given the lore of magic we're talking about with regards to them. So that's one of the big things. There's, of course, other things in terms of buildings and so on, but that's the big change I think Creative Assembly should make. The second big thing they should talk about is the Great Bastion situation, because let me be blunt, the Great Bastion just really does suck. It's a significant sink in resources. It doesn't grow as quickly as your rigorous elements. Yes, you can recruit units from them, but because of the limited growth that you have in the Bastion's elements, yes, you do have a special commandment for growth. Yes, you have a pretty strong growth building, but because they're single region provinces, 3 of them, ends up being questionable. Maybe it would be a good idea to just have a single province for the entirety of the Great Bastion with all the significant growth benefits that come from that, because that's the big deal. And you'd have to balance out where you'd upgrade things and all that kind of stuff, and where you'd put an army. Sure, it would create some recruitment issues with it, but honestly it would be far more useful for recruitment location, especially if you could get multiple recruitment slots. So the entire concept of the Great Bastion, the way that plays out in the lore, is not really well reflected in the game, I think, with regards to how Cathay ends up playing out. And this is a pretty big deal, since you do have all those constant rogue armies. Maybe we should get rid of those rogue armies completely with regards to the Great Bastion. It was just a really bad idea for Realms of Chaos. And then we have the Compass. The Compass is basically worthless. It's a gimmick. Even for Yanbo, it's a gimmick. I mean, basically, since you have poor casualty replenishment at the moment, you almost always want to go for Great Bastion, but even if you did have good casualty replenishment, you'd probably go for Celestial Lake, whereas Yanbo, once you unlock it, you'd just go for Nongchang Basin. And everything else is damn pointless. And again, I don't really think that's how the compass should work. So you have these systems, right? You have the compass, you have the Bastion, and then you have Harmony. Harmony was improved with the release of Shadows Change, but it's not a great system. It does give you significant province-wide effects, sure, and you can go down one path or another. But here's my perspective on Harmony. I think Harmony would work much better if it was similar to how the supporter system of Kislev works, like a separate research tree, basically, because that's how supporters play out, but where you have to balance things out between one side or another. I think that would be a much better system than what we currently have for Cathay, because the supporter system of Kislev is brilliant, and it would work really, really well if they adapted that to be a Harmony system. You know, you have yin actions and yang actions, and no, not tied to the freaking structures. Like, it's always annoying having to build your settlements in a certain way just because of the damn balancing act of yin or yang. Just really annoying. Because you do end up in a situation where you basically negate a lot of the upkeep benefits, a lot of the upkeep downsides of, you know, supply lines. So this is one of the ridiculous parts of Cathay, because yes, supply lines increase army costs and all that, but because you can negate up to 25%, you effectively have no supply lines for a vast portion of your campaign. You need a ridiculous number of armies in order to actually make supply lines count for anything, and the whole balancing aspect is not great. So those are some of the things. I would also say unique mechanics for Xiaoming and Miaoying would also be in order to make them have unique campaign mechanics that really make them stand out, because that's one of the big problems of Cathay campaigns. It feels very samey, like whether you're playing on Bo, Miaoying, Xiaoming, you kind of end up playing the same campaign, and that's one of the problems that kills replayability for a campaign. And yes, just because you start in Lustria with Yanbo does not change that, because you still have a settlement in Cathay, and it's always good to focus on taking over Cathay. Maybe some Confederation mechanic would be in order, though. Funnily enough, unlike so many other races, Cathay is really good at confederating each other. Well, unless Yao Ming becomes this powerhouse of a faction, then he's a nightmare to confederate, but that's a different discussion. Most of the time, it's reasonably good, but maybe something to help that along. Maybe the entire system of confederation should work differently. Yanbo's entire Cathayan situation is awful. Like, there's literally a mod that changes his starting position to be in the Celestial Riverlands, and believe it or not, that's a better campaign. Sure, it means the Lustria objective is done slower. Who gives a shit about Lustria, ultimately? And it actually is a better campaign dynamic where you can focus quite heavily on Cathay and then go to Lustria, because you can then invade Lustria with a lot of fucking armies at the same time, as opposed to having to split your attention between Cathay and Lustria, which does suck, not gonna lie, on that subject. So those are some of the things: unique legendary lords, situations, starring situations, campaign mechanics. And honestly, I think even Yanbo could use some kind of updates to his unique mechanic, because the problem he has at the moment, yes, he has powerful mechanics, but it's more of a case like he gets to a point, like they play out from the start, but it's really only later on that they have any meaningful effect. You look at Karl Franz, that's actually a much better system, because you're constantly using Karl Franz's shit. It's relevant from turn 1, whereas with Yanbo, it's relevant from like turn 20 or so. Then, of course, we have the obvious things like research tree. Yes, Cathay's research tree needs an overhaul. As things currently stand, you basically just want to get Grace of Kuai Yin, then Right of Yang. Get these two things, reduce the upkeep of your units even further. Yep, ends up being ridiculous. And then just basically not give a damn about anything else. Because here's the thing. You get drill training, you get Jade Stance, you get Dragon Scales, you get Fletching Mentors. Those are going to be far more powerful benefits. So, yeah, Research Tree overhaul, would be very much in order. Differentiation between military benefits and economic benefits, campaign benefits would also help out a great deal. And then we should talk about the unit recruitment in itself. Cathay's big problem in terms of unit diversity is that, yes, they have a lot of units, and they have pretty much anything you would want. They have great infantry, great ranged, artillery, flying units. It's all there, monsters. It's like, it's one of the best unit rosters in the entire freaking game. But here's the problem. And if the idea is Cathay should play as a slower race, they fucking do not. You spam Jade Warriors and Jade Warrior Crossbow, maybe some Iron Hail Gunners and Grenadiers, and you dominate everyone in your path. That's not the problem. The problem is you're never encouraged to use anything else. I think some kind of warband upgrade system for Jade Warriors at least would be very much in order, just to upgrade them from like Jade Warriors with shields to Halberdiers, and then Crossbowmen to Crossbowmen with shields. That's kind of my perspective. In general, with unit variants, that kind of warband upgrade system would be very much in order across the board. And yeah, more unit variety, maybe a reduction in unit tiers. Like, yes, crossbows should be tier 4, maybe Dragon Guard. Well, you know, making them tier 3, maybe it's not needed. But yeah, having both of them tier 4, some merging of buildings, all that kind of stuff would be very welcome. Also, old heroes should be recruited at tier 2, increase capacity at tier 3. I mean, they do increase capacity at tier 3, except Astromancers. Funny part about Astromancers, because that's a ridiculous bullshit that CA does. You know, you get a couple of special structures, you get like the Grand Observatory, and eventually you just end up having so many damn Astromancers you couldn't give a damn about the situation. Like, oh, you can only increase capacity at tier 4. It's like, no. After a certain point, you end up having a ridiculous number of Astromancers. All at once! Maybe they should stagger out better, like, you know, you can get more earlier instead of just like a massive amount of them later on. Of course, this can also be tied to short campaign victory conditions. That's part of the problem. It's like, in general, I am not a fan of tying hero capacity to campaign victory conditions, because you've won the fucking campaign. Why is hero capacity something you only get once you've done the hard part, right? So that's something I would change in general for order-tied factions. The dwarves don't need it. The dwarves work well, but they still have it, so it's pretty redundant, just a victory condition in general. And in terms of unit recruitment beyond, you know, infantry and all that, it's also the cavalry building chain. It's practically worthless. Like, I would just remove this entire building chain, put all the units in different structures. Like, yeah, Jade Lancers from the barracks, for instance, tier 3. Because you almost never want to get Jade Lancers. Why would you waste a building slot on a unit that's only situationally good when you have so many other things you need? Like, you want Jade Warriors, you want Jade Warrior Crossbowmen, and then you gotta decide, okay, do I want monsters? Do I want freaking artillery? Why would I ever waste a building slot, especially one that would require tier 3, on a unit I couldn't care about? And it's kind of a shame, because Jade Lancers are a pretty cool unit. And, you know, Longma Riders, also pretty cool. No one goes to tier 5 to use fucking Longma Riders. Like, when you got Terracotta Sentinels and freaking Skyjunks at tier 5, and crossbows, yeah, Longma Riders, they should be a tier 4 unit at most. Maybe Jade Lancers tier 2, Longma Riders tier 3 even. Could be an idea. Or tier 4. Just some notions on that subject. But it is a problem with cavalry in general, that a lot of the time with cavalry, it's not actually worth recruiting them in many campaigns. And there's plenty of factions that have cool cavalry, but it's not worth going down that path to just recruit 1 or 2 units. I mean, you look at Kislev, you basically recruit cavalry from Prague, because you get Griffin Legion from a structure that also gives you a ton of other shit. And it's very useful, landmark. And then you get Warbear Riders. You don't bother with Winged Lancers as Kislev. So it's a general issue. I would say the only faction that kind of does it is the Empire, but that's because they get a ton of different cavalry choices. Yes, it's melee cavalry and all that, but Blazing Knight, Knights of the Blazing Sun, Empire Knights, Reichsguard, etc. You know, having that kind of variety from a single structure does incentivize you to actually go for it more. And cavalry for Empire is pretty important. Not so for Cathay. Now, when you got freaking monsters, right? Like, why would you get Jade Lancers when you can get Jade Jet Lions and Celestial Lines. Like, you want cavalry, get the Celestial Line. It's more effective in a lot more situations. But those would be my perspectives on the subject. Also, yeah, Winged Onyx Crowman, kind of useless unit. They're a bit useful for harassing, but yeah, just campaign-wise, kind of useless unit. Don't really work that well. I mean, if you want a flying harasser unit, sure, it's tier 3, but it's a heck of a lot fucking better at the job. That's the thing about the Celestial Line, it invalidates 2 other units. And it's not really expensive, and it's really, really good in a lot more situations. But that's kind of all I had to say. Christine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.